Everybody, this is Ryan with Rigs of Death Metal. Today, my guest is Neil Smith of so many bands. Most recently was Dripping Decay, uh, RIP. Also, Bloodfreak, Frightmare. We'll go into all kinds of them here in a bit. But how's it going, man?
It's doing good. How are you?
Not bad. Enjoying a little bit of free time I get for the weekend.
Mhm. Yeah, me too.
Well, first and foremost, we're a gear centric channel, so we'll deep dive into that.
Okay.
Um, I know you've got a bit of an affinity for the Jackson shredders,
hmm
and
Yeah.
it seems like the more retro, the better. Um, so let's just kind of talk about some of your favorites right now.
I got some notes here, but my main guitar is a 2018 uh, Jackson Pro Series
Okay.
DK2. It's pretty much stock, other than I replaced the bridge pickup with an Invader, which
Okay.
is kind of like my go-to bridge pickup. And I took out the screw-in arm and put in a push-in arm because I can't deal with those screw-in arms because they're no matter how tight you get them, they're always kind of floppy, you know.
Oh
So
yeah.
I always retrofit my bridges with those. But that's my main one, and I got it right here. So kind of this super red,
Oh yeah.
kind of burn
Love it.
your retinas out kind of thing. But yeah, this is kind of like my main guitar I've been using for the past like 4 years or so.
Oh yeah.
Uh, but I've been playing Jackson since I was like 16 years old in the late 90s. It's like kind of my first guitar that I bought with my own money was a Japanese made Jackson PS4 with a reverse headstock and the three pickups, the humbucker in the neck, bridge, and single coil in the middle. I
Yeah.
had that for years. So just really like the neck profiles and
Sure.
very shreddy. Yeah, it's kind of like my main guitar right now for sure.
Oh, I love any kind of shreddy neck. Jackson, Ibanez.
hmm
I've got ESP make really comfortable necks.
Yeah. I
Um,
used to have the Kirk Hammett signature. I like that guitar, but the only thing I didn't like is I'm not much into finished necks as
yeah,
much. It kind of feels a little sluggish at times, but
sure.
it had a good cool profile on it too.
I've had that, I won't say heated debate, but friendly debate with people a lot over the years, especially a cousin of mine that plays. We'll talk like he loves Gibsons, all right? And like a lot of set or sometimes neck through with the painted finished necks, and but he doesn't do fast stuff. Definitely doesn't
hmm
do like shreddy stuff. He's a riff guy. So it's like, well, yeah, I mean, it's fine then, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I've had the Gibson Explorer and Epiphone Explorer. Um, I like them, but when I would go back to just the standard, like, you know, Jackson or like you said, like ESP or Ibanez style
Yeah.
necks, it was just like, that's just, that's what I'm comfortable with. I mean, that and like the scale length of those guitars are kind of, they're shorter and it's always kind of strange to find the right gauge that
Yeah.
has that sort of, right tension,
Hmm.
because it's either too tight of a tension or too loose. And it's just like, because I tune down usually to either B or A. So it's kind of like, I mean, if I played in like more standard kind of tunings,
Hmm.
I'd definitely be more into like Gibsons and with this kind
Right.
of 24 and a quarter inch scale kind of guitars.
For sure. Um, what, well, let's just kind of go through your chain in general right now. Any
All
kind
right.
of effects, amps, cabs, all the fun stuff.
Yeah. It goes, either my this Jackson or I've got another DK2 Pro Series that I go. It's pretty much the identical guitar, just kind of a different finish. Um, and I go into Polytune. Well, actually, first I go into a Dunlop 95 QWA. Um,
Hmm.
the
Hell
kind
yeah.
of customize the plate on it to green, but it's the auto return kind with the adjustable cue and boost. My
Gotcha.
favorite wah, just because I don't, especially live, it's kind of a guessing game. You don't know if it's on or off. I just,
Right.
you know, it's, nice to have that.
Sure.
That's what I first go into that, then a TC Electronic Polytune 3. And then for boosting, I've been using past few years just an old Maxon OD808 classic sort of drive all the way down, balance all the way up, tone in the middle kind of thing. And then I recently got a 1994 analog Boss Super Chorus just
Okay.
for certain parts to add sort of like a washiness kind of to it.
Right.
Um, this is all in front. And then I just to kind of cut the signal because I don't like noise gates. I've never found a noise gate that I like. I just have a JHS mute switch, which is just kind of this little switch that turns the signal on and off in between songs or whatever. And then through the loop, I have an avalanche run or earthquaker devices, which is a delay and a reverb built into one. I really like that pedal because it's got a latching sort of mechanism that activates it on and off. So if you just want to like turn delay on for a second, you
Hmm.
don't have to click it twice. You just kind of step on it and then let go, and it
Oh,
turns it
okay.
on momentarily.
Sure.
And then on the tap switch, it's got this cool self oscillating kind of thing that's really cool, like live. If you want to make noises and shit, it kind of just repeats onto itself and makes a bunch of racket. So yeah, that's basically my pedal board right now. And then that goes into a EVH 5153 Stealth 100-watt head.
Okay.
Um, and then that goes into an orange PPC 4x12 with vintage 30s and then Eminence DD77s, and those are in an X pattern. So,
Oh, nice.
like that. And I just recently put casters on the orange cab because those
You got
things are a
to.
nightmare to carry without them. So I got some
Sure.
Mesa Boogie casters that I put on the bottoms, so
Yeah.
removable ones. So that's about it. Yeah, yeah, that's basically the gist of the main signal chain.
Hell yeah. And if you said it, I think I missed it. What gauge of strings do you tend to prefer for like B tuning?
I've been using for the past like 6 or 7 years these NYXLs,
Hmm.
the 13 to 56 gauge with the wound G. I've been using
Nice.
this actual set for B standard since like 2002. Uh, when I joined Lord Gore and started playing guitar, they were in B standard, and I just had been playing the regular XLs. And
Yeah.
when I found these are just, these just last longer and they're just, kind of a little bit brighter. But I use that for B and A.
Nice.
In A it's a little more slack, but it still, sounds in tune. Doesn't kind of go too sharp when you hit hard. I kind of prefer lighter strings than most people when they tune down. Um, I know a lot of guys, even for B standard, a 56 is kind of like light for the B, but I don't know. At a certain point, it gets too heavy and it starts to
Hmm.
almost sound muddy. You kind of don't have that snap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It almost sounds like a bass. I don't know. Maybe it's just in my head, but that's what I think.
It
I try to be a little light until it gets too heavy. So,
for sure. No, I mean it absolutely makes a difference on the tone, that tension, and yeah, it's I don't know. It is kind of weird to describe. It's almost like kind of squishy. I don't know, but it's like kind of bright, but like not in a very articulate way. I don't know. It's weird to describe when you go too high of tension.
yeah, it's to me that's just too much like low end information. It doesn't have that snap. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
especially when you're doing like single notes or palm mutes, it just kind of it's almost like choking the note. You know what I
sure,
mean? It doesn't let the note breathe. But yeah, I've always kind of use more medium styles, strings. It's kind of what
sure.
it is.
What about picks?
I use I think I have one right here. Yeah. Dunlop Tortex T3s.
Okay.
They're kind of like a they're kind of like a jazz pick, but the same size as a normal.
Hmm.
It, it's like if you took a normal pick and just put the jazz sharp,
Sure.
tip.
Yeah. I've
I've been using those for a long time.
I've got
So
kind of like custom picks that are basically the
mhm.
basically same shape.
Well, because I'm self-taught and I play strange. I like the way I hold my pick is kind of weird. I think like James Hetfield might hold it like this, but I hold it with like three fingers
Oh
like that,
yeah.
not with two. So I tried the Jazz 3 and it would just disappear in my fingers.
Yeah.
So I like the tip, but when I found out about these, I was like, "Oh, these are perfect because I can actually hold them and not have them
Right.
disappear in my hand."
Um, it's funny. That seems to be more of a common thing than most people might believe.
Really?
Like you're you're at least the third or fourth person I've heard of that does that. Um, one or two of them might have changed their ways up by now. I'm not sure, but yeah, no. Even like there's at least a couple guys on YouTube and stuff that say that that's how they learned to play. There's one of them, I think it was like because they learned how to play like that, playing like Guitar Hero or something. So
Oh,
when they
okay.
picked up a real guitar, that's how they carried it over.
I used to draw as a kid. I still do sometimes, but like
Hmm.
before I even thought about picking up a guitar, and when you hold a pen, you usually hold it
Sure.
back. So I was kind of like, when I started playing guitar, I was like, oh, it was just natural to hold a pick
Yeah.
like you would hold a pencil or a pen. So, and it wasn't until I saw other people play, I was like, wait, I guess I'm doing it wrong, but yeah, I can't play with the two finger thing. And the pick just flies out of my hands if I even try to do
Sure.
it.
Sure. Um, well, going back to your signal chain, there's a couple things I wanted to touch on. The most interesting probably being the speakers. Well,
Hmm.
interesting for me because I'm a fucking nerd, but uh, um, so X pattern of V30s and DV77s, correct?
Yeah, the stock V30s that came with the orange cab are in there. And those are
Sure.
probably like, I think I got the cab at around 2018, so they're probably around then.
Okay.
And then yeah, I just recently, about 5 months ago or so, put the DV77s in there.
Nice.
I just I like uh vintage 30s, but like most people, the sort of high mids are kind of screechy. I like
Yeah.
them because they cut a lot, but it's like I kind of wanted something with a little bit more low mids, a little more low end to kind of complement that.
Hmm.
Kind of went online, people seem to be liking that combination. So I tried it out. It sounds great. So I'm pretty stoked on it.
Now, is it like in the room hearing test kind of thing? They sound sick together, or have you recorded with that combination? What, because you
I have not recorded with that combination, but I did a small tour with this cab, and most of the times they mic the GV77 just I have not recorded with it, but in the room they sound fantastic. So
gotcha. I was gonna ask that next, like which one do you mic live versus in the studio? But uh, one of the comments I've heard the most, I think, about the 77s is that it's kind of like what at least for recording, it's what a V30 sounds like after you've done like the editing and some post processing on it and got it to sound the way, you know, you need it to sound in a mix or something
yeah,
like
kind of EQing it and
that. Hmm.
cutting out all the frequencies you don't want. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's very interesting. I've been shopping for speakers for like months and then still
Hmm.
haven't pulled the trigger, just messing with IRs and things like that in the meantime. Um, the other thing is the EVH head. The
Hmm.
Stealth are super sick.
Yeah.
I've got to play some. I've got Kemper profiles of them. Uh, how many of, because EVH is just like done so many different flavors of the same amp. It's
Hmm.
kind of fascinating in a way. Have you got to try out a bunch of different variations? How'd you land on the Stealth?
I had played. probably around 2014. I had played the the first one that came out, the white one,
Hmm.
the 100 watt, and I was like, man, this is sick. I was like, this is one of the sickest heads I've ever played through. And because I have had like 6505, 5150 block letters, signatures, all variations of the PV version over the years. Um, and I was like, this, I like this more. Uh, and I had just wanted to buy a new head at the time. This is around 2016, and I think they had just came out with the stealths. Like this was like a limited edition. It was like Eddie's, all his, things that he's changed about the stock head for his tour or whatever like that. It was supposed to be a limited edition. Now it's like you can
Yeah.
buy them. But I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to get. If it's even better than that, the white stock version, then it's just got to be, mind blowing. But I just without hearing the actual stealth, I just kind of bought it. I know it's kind of an expensive thing to just buy blindly,
Hmm.
but yeah, it was. I was like, ah, here's $2,500. Hopefully it sounds just as good. But yeah, it's what's cool about it is it's like it has the depth, knobs for each channel, which
Hmm.
is nice because the original one didn't have a depth knob at all, so which was kind of weird.
Huh.
Um, it's got more distortion on the blue channel, which is actually where I use the blue channel like 90% of the time. That's like my main rhythm tone is on the
Yeah.
blue channel. I just feel it's got less compression, to a more nicer mid range to it.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm super happy with it. I like I said, I've had it since like 2016, so going on 8 years now.
Yeah.
Never had any issue with it. I've played it on tours, done many recordings with it. Sounds great. I mean, you don't even really need a boost with it. I'm just so used to using a boost that I just kind of use it anyways.
Sure. Hey, I mean, don't feel bad. I could use almost any amp, and I would still. It could be something as high gain and like great out of the box as like an Ingle, and I'd
Mm,
probably choose one of the lesser gain channels and dial it back a bit, and then use an overdrive, just because it just something to do with hitting the front end and hitting the
mm.
face of the preamp is just different
It's
than
the feel of it too. It's like the way the amp feels. I know that people throw that term around, but it's like, when you play through an overdrive, like you said, hitting a more lower gain sort of, channel, it just, I don't know, it feels better. I don't know,
right.
like that's why I use the blue channel because it doesn't have as much gain, doesn't have as much compression. I kind of turn the gain a little bit down and then just, use the OD808 as kind of like, the classic sort of clean boost, just to kind of tighten things up and add a little bit of chunk.
Right. Man, that it makes me a little curious with the EVH Stealth. Like I know one of the I guess sort of marketing things about that amp it was Eddie's popular mods that he had done to the original.
Mm,
One of the popular mods out there for the original that supposedly anybody can do, all they need is a pair of pliers and to open the thing up, is like I guess one piece that you can like clip
okay.
out of the original amp, and it alters the blue channel in the way that you were describing, like adds more
Mm.
gain, makes it a little more, I guess, opens it up. So makes me curious if they just kind of did that stock for the stealth, you know?
It probably did. I mean, it's kind of like what I assumed would happen is he took the original head, kind of took it on tour, tested it
Sure,
out, probably did some recordings, like, okay, I want to tweak these certain things. And then
sure.
that's what the stealth was. And that's why I was like, well, if this is supposed to be an improvement on the original,
Yeah.
then I'm definitely going to like it because I like the original. So, um, you know, some people prefer the original, PV versions. I like them both. My complaint about the PVs was maybe it was just only me, but I always felt like the distortion was like super mid-rangey, almost clanging sounding. I don't know if that
Hmm.
makes sense, but like the notes just sounded really clangy, like almost like you had like you were playing through a single coil pickup or something. That was my always my complaint about the original 5150. It just didn't have enough like I don't know. thickness and low mids, if you know what I mean. It was more like high mid sort of like distortion, which is fine, but like
Yeah.
I feel like this is more to my taste, the EVH stuff. So
See, like, and I've got like one of those Kartaku preamps, like the 1U rack mount preamps, and it's basically a 5150 clone,
mm,
uh, or 5152 is like a switch. Um, and I mean, it's cool. I just kind of wanted to have something like that again, and as opposed to just the Kemper, you know what I mean?
hmm
And it's cool. And I've gone back and forth on, just flipping it or whatever. And it just reminds me how, like, why I've never really gelled with a lot of 5150 or PV amps in general. It's like they sound good. Um, but it's just nothing really particularly sticks out to me. Maybe it's because I've heard it so much over the years.
yeah, it's like the stock tone. I mean,
Yeah.
that
And
a 5150 through a recto cab. I mean, that's kind of like
yeah.
the cliche.
And like for like a decade, my sound was I had a Rev F like 2 channel dual rectifier, and
Mm,
I would boost that thing and I'd crank the mids up. Um and I guess it was somewhat comparable to like a boosted SLO or something, you
okay.
know? Like like the mid range was great. Like very barky. Um and the tone was super defined. I had good with the boost. It was like just the right amount of low end. It wasn't too flubby. Like it was great. Uh, and it was lots of gain, but it was still very articulate.
Hmm
So, and they just sound huge, right? Like they're actually
Yeah,
way too many frequencies for a guitar player. Like they sound too big. Um, and most of those get cut out in the mixing process.
yeah.
But
You cut a lot of that low end and a lot of those super high like busy
yeah,
frequencies, anyways, when you record. No,
sure,
that's one of the things that people do say about the EVH stuff is it's kind of like the PV 5150, but more refined. And I'd agree with that. It's like it's kind of like if I what I would change about a 5150, like where the focus of the mid range is, or
Hmm.
a little bit more I don't want to say crisp sound, but more of a just refined kind of sound. Like you really don't need a boost. Like you can turn that red channel has ridiculous amounts of gains. It's
Oh
like
yeah,
insane. And but you can turn that thing all the way up and still hear the notes, even tuned down to like D or A. It's very articulate, um, which is a good thing if or it's a bad thing if your chops aren't good and you can hear every single mistake you make. You know what I mean? It's like, uh, but it's reliable. I've never had any issues with it. Knock on wood. But it's a
sure.
really it's a solid amp for sure.
And that's kind of the other thing with the old PV 5150s. Um, and I know this kind of sounds stupid in a way, but they almost sound too forgiving. Like the distortion isn't super articulate. It's better if you boost it, sure,
Mhm.
but it just kind of sounds like almost a wall of distortion, and it's almost
Yeah,
hard to sound bad through them. I'm
yeah,
sure that's why a lot of people like them,
yeah.
but with the Mesa was way less forgiving and it made me better and play tighter. And I was able to hear every little thing better, which I liked because I
hmm
like to be on top of my shit. But
hmm
um but that's
I
why I've always said the EVH stuff I preferred over the PV stuff.
I mean I like even though I play like death metal and grind and gore grind and stuff like that, I always like to be able to hear what I'm playing. I know
Right?
a lot of people, they just want it to sound like that. They just want it to sound like just a heavy, wall of sound. But if I'm gonna, spend the time to write a song or a riff, I want people to actually hear it. So it's like
Sure.
that's one of the things I appreciated, like you were saying, like how articulate the EVH stuff is. You can push the distortion so it's super saturated and heavy, but you can hear every single note.
Yeah.
And even playing super fast tremolo picking and down picking and stuff like that, it's clear. But yeah, you got to keep up on your chops. That's for sure. I mean, The only other amp that I've heard is probably even more so like that, or like DHT stuff, like pit bowls and stuff like that. They're
Oh
super
yeah.
dry,
Oh God.
super articulate to the point where it's like it's like you don't even have any fun playing them because you can hear like every little nuance and you
They're
know,
so dry.
yeah, it's this stuff those are great.
Those, yeah, those are on the opposite end of the spectrum for me where I have to kind of saturate them a little bit with an OD just so, yeah, like you can kind of enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah. So you're not like, damn, I didn't know I was that sloppy on that riff. Or shit.
But man,
Yeah.
I got to try one of the very first Fryette pit bulls, like whenever
Hmm.
the division happened, I guess. Um, which I'm from West Virginia and there's like nothing but mom and pop shops here, right? Like no guitar centers at all.
Okay.
And our local shop, which was buddies with the guys that worked there, still am. And I remember I was back when I was still taking guitar lessons, after school and crap like that. And I was walking out of my lesson and one of my buddies grabbed me like, "Hey, we got this Fryette rep here. He brought some amps to check out, see if we'd be interested in selling them. And you want to play through one?" I'm like, "Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what they are, but I want to play through them." And I saw them, I recognized them from like because they still looked like VHTs, right?
Yeah, the same font and everything, and the
Yeah.
faceplate's the same. Yeah.
So I saw that and I was like, wait a minute. Like I remember seeing them in like an Unearthed music video or something. So I'm like, okay, I kind of know what's up with this. And found a guitar with EMGs and was playing through it. And it was like, it was exactly what I wanted at that time. And I was very disheartened when I found out how much they cost.
Oh, I could never afford one of those things. It's like like the SLOs. I mean, those things sound great, but I that's like almost twice as much as my EVH costs. So
Yeah.
for 4 grand.
Yeah, there's some small like boutique builders out there now that are making they're still, more affordable than like a Marshall Origin, but they're relatively affordable handmade kind of like SLO, kind of clones, but with like
Yeah,
more options and all that. It's still made here in America, which,
I
still
never
pretty
played
sick.
through an SLO, but I played through the Avenger,
Yeah.
which is kind of like I guess kind of like a single channel. I'm not exactly sure. It was kind of like it was a cheaper sort of version, I guess, of an SLO. But that
Yeah.
thing sounded sick. That thing was rad. So
Yeah, it's supposed to, I guess, be like the lead channel of an
yeah,
SLO,
kind of like
which,
simplified. Yeah.
yeah, which I had I've had a couple guests that like, well, I had Greg from Autopsy on here, and he has one
Yeah.
in his studio, which I believe he had modded somehow, maybe just to have an effects loop. I don't remember. Um, And I guess the people that actually have them and own them and play them or know anything about them, like will tell you like, oh, they're so different from an SLO, but
Oh,
like
okay.
they're cool in their own way. I
All
don't
right.
know. I don't
Yeah,
know
it sounded rad. I mean, it was kind of like a very high gain, articulate kind of amp, but definitely kind of thick and
for sure.
saturated. Um, I mean, I at the time I had a 5150 block letter, and my friend August, who's a vocalist in Lord Gore, he had it at the time, and he brought it to our practice space, and I like AB'd it. And I was like, man, I want I want your Avenger because I actually liked it more than the 5150. But he ended
They
up selling it.
Soldano stuff is sick.
Yeah, it's worth the money, I guess.
I was even window shopping a like the new 30-watt SLO,
Mhm.
which are still expensive, and I'm like, it's like, yeah, I got a couple 412s. I mean, 30 watts technically is more than enough for
Yeah,
even playing like a little bar gig here or there because I'm not touring, you know what I mean? Like
yeah, yeah.
so it's
Well,
like
it's like, yeah, I'd never turn my EVH up past 3, even recording or
yeah,
playing live. I fucked around and like at practice and turned it up halfway one time, and I was like, oh my god, this is insane. But like, yeah, it's way too much, way too more than you actually need. Like,
yeah. But I mean like there is something. to be said about like the extra headroom and what it does for the
Mhm.
low end and all
Yep.
that. So it's sometimes it's not even about the volume, it's about like the tone because a
Yeah.
100 watt amp is going to sound fundamentally different than
Yeah.
a
Exactly. I mean, like you
30 or
said, that
50 watt.
the headroom. I mean, you can kind of push the amp, volume wise harder and not have it start compressing as much.
Oh
And
yeah.
definitely has a larger low end because I love the low end.
And fun tip for maybe some less experienced players or consumers, buyers, whatever out there. You don't have to get the 100 watt. It's technically overkill for almost any gig you'll be doing, even a VFW hall that's unmiked.
Mhm.
Um, and a lot of players might actually find they like a 50 watt amp more because they
Mhm.
can get like that compression and a little bit extra saturation earlier.
Yeah.
I know Vogue from Decapitated has been a big fan of like the 50 watt EVH heads over the years for that same reason.
Yeah. I never tried one out. I mean, they're definitely smaller because that's one thing
Right.
about the head is this thing is huge. It's like the biggest, literally like the biggest head I've ever played through or seen. I mean, I bought a case for it and I thought it was going to fit, and it was like an inch and a half too big. So I ended up having to like rip out most of the padding inside of it just to fit the head inside the
Right.
the case. Yeah, it's huge and it's massively heavy. I bought like the two worst, pieces of amp equipment to bring on tour: an orange and a giant 100 watt EVH head that weighs like 150 pounds. It's like,
Hey, it could have been worse. You could have gotten like like an old Ampeg V4
yeah,
or I don't know, just anything that has like those gigantic like Parsons transformers or something.
yeah. I mean, that's what you get when you want something that's awesome. Sometimes you
For
got to deal
sure.
with the size issues or whatever. So,
Oh yeah. Um, Kind of switching gears from gear a little bit. Uh, have you predominantly, I mean, obviously I know we all know that you write some sick riffs. You're a
oh, thanks.
very prolific songwriter in the genre. Um, as like, have you recorded the majority of the solos across the different albums that you've played on? Like, I
Um,
always see you credited as like lead guitar, so I always like for Frightmare, Bloodfreak, and Dripping Decay. When I hear leads, I assume it's you.
uh, for Drip and Decay and Bloodfreak, all the leads are done by me because
Okay,
I'm the only guitar player in those bands. But for Frightmare, it was myself, August, and a few parts where Ryan, the bass player, who's also a guitar player, he did some leads. But usually for Frightmare, it's like split 50-50 between August and I,
gotcha.
with those leads.
I was mainly curious with Frightmare because there are some sick leads and some variety too, which you kind of laying it out like that explains the variety and I guess musical vocabulary. Um, but yeah, there are definitely some interesting ones. When it comes to I guess at least your lead playing, um, who would you say are some of like your inspirations?
Uh, Lots of different people. I mean, a lot of like classic metal people, like KK Downing, Glenn Tipton, Judas Priest, obviously. For death metal, like Trey from Morbid Angel, Bill Steer, Carcass, huge influences, and also some like guys like Al Di Meola and stuff like that. More like melodic kind of sense and stuff. I mean, I listen to all kinds of like especially lead playing. I'm more open minded other than like just death metal or metal players. A lot of like sort of fusion guys like that, or um, Yeah, that's basically, a lot of guys like
Hell
that.
yeah.
I mean, the noisier stuff like Kerry King and then the guys from
Oh, sure.
Repulsion, the whammy stuff. I mean, that's, you know, but for like melodic sense and stuff like that, I definitely kind of look for people outside of like death
Yeah.
metal and stuff. That's just gonna be different, instead of just playing the same sort of stuff. Like the try to find, modes and that maybe other guys don't use, like
Hmm.
um
I personally, I kind of tend to lean towards the same way, more melodic. Um, because I mean the music is normally so very like heavy and sometimes really chaotic.
mm,
The vocals certainly don't have any melody. So it's cool to incorporate some melodic sense somewhere. Um, and it's also very expressive for a guitarist, you know? Um, but
yeah, I especially with Frightmare, I even got a lot of influences by bands that don't have leads, like the Misfits and stuff like that. A lot of their like
Mm.
vocal melody were hugely
Sure.
influential on a lot of the guitar melodies in like Frightmare. That's um it doesn't have to be a lead, another lead player or something. It could be a vocal part or something that's influential.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, it's kind of like you just kind of grab shit out of the ether and whatever is interesting, then you kind of use it. Um, but I agree 100%. Yeah, if I tend to go toward more melodic stuff when it comes to leads. Catchy. That's important for me. Something you kind of can hum in your head. You know, if you can do that with Death Grind or whatever, but like something's like, oh, I like that part. If it's stuck in my head, it's got a hook. Which instead of just going, just like tapping and stuff all the
Oh,
time.
yeah.
That's fun too. That's got its place, but it to me, it's more fun to write something that's like I said, like catchy, kind of
Oh,
like
yeah. I,
melodious.
I think a lot of people that have like negative misconceptions with lead guitar playing. Like I've had bandmates that said they hate guitar solos, it's the most boring parts of the songs and blah blah blah. But, then I'll play a lead part over something. And I guess for me it started with like Tony Iommi and Brian May, where
Oh
there were,
yeah,
you know what I mean? And then just found players that evolved from that mentality.
yeah.
And some can be really technical, but still have that cool melodic structure, where everything just, I guess most people just think it fits the song better. It's like a composition within a composition.
Hmm.
Uh, and I think a lot of
Well,
people have like that stereotypical 80s hair metal, like Rudolph Schenker kind
uh,
of, Rocky Like a Hurricane lead stuff where,
oh yeah, everything's got to be wankery, like like
yeah.
instead of actually coming up with a part that adds to the song, adds to the melodic sense of the song. It's like it's great that you brought up Brian May because he's definitely one of my earliest influences as a guitar player. I mean, Queen was like one of the first bands I ever just liked, one of the first music I ever liked. I remember I was like 5 years old seeing Highlander in the theater. That just aged me. And hearing like the opening, Princes of the Universe, and they're like, "What is that?" That's fucking rad. And you're 5 years old. You don't really have a favorite band. At least I didn't. I was just like, I like that. What is that? And that was like the first guitar thing I ever heard, just like opening chord. And his like sense of melody and harmony and the way he layers guitars. I mean, that's a big influence too. Is like layering guitars in an interesting way. I like doing that as well. It's like to me that's definitely more interesting for me as a guitar player than just kind of like how fast you can play or
Sure.
how noisy you can be. I mean, I tended to be more interested in that kind of stuff when I first got my guitar with a whammy bar. Oh, I can do Kerry King solos, and then that's 20 years ago. So it's like,
Yeah. Um, that kind of reminds me of a question from earlier, and then we'll get back into songwriting. But um, you mentioned earlier how you always like to swap out for like the push and tremolo arm. Um,
mhm.
I've seen plenty of people that have like preferences for tremolo arms. Some go for like the Red Bear. I saw somebody really likes like the Ibanez like push in arms. And do you have a preference, or like is there a particular brand or anybody?
I just use this is just the Floyd Rose branded push-in, and you just kind of like install it in the bridge.
Gotcha.
Um, I mean, you have the adjustment. It kind of has like a rubber collar on it, and you
Hmm.
can kind of like adjust it. I haven't tried the other ones. I mean, I've had the Edge tremolo where it has that on an RG that I had years back. Uh, but these are fine. I kind of crank it so you can barely. You have to forcibly move it. I like it to be in its spot and
Sure.
never move because I like to do some flutters here and there, or just
Hmm.
I don't like any give at all. Um, so I mean that's why I can't play a trem that has that those
Right.
twist collar things or just trash things.
Hmm. I I've got one guitar right now with a usable trem, and it's like the hip shot contour trem, just because I wanted
Okay.
something different. It's like it's a 2 point tremolo, but it's way more usable than like a Fender like vintage
Okay.
trem or something like that. I don't know. It's sort of like this oddball in between. Um, with the way the guitar is designed, and I'm not doing crazy dives with it. I mean, it's substantial for that guitar, but I've got another one coming with a Goto, uh,
Okay.
like a 7 string 1996 T, and that one I'm already kind of shopping around. It's gonna come with one, but I'm already kind of looking into like they've got some that have like a grip on the arm itself and crap like
Yeah.
that. So it's kind of
I mean,
shopping around again.
have you ever tried Kahlers before?
One time on a
Okay.
Hanneman model, like in a
Okay.
guitar store, and it was the most effortless tremolo I'd ever used.
Yeah, those things are nice. They're definitely different. I used to have a 1981 NJ series BC Rich Bitch, and it had a Kahler on it, and
Ooh.
I I used that for all the leads on the Bloodfreak Multiplex Massacre album, and that was
Mm.
just so easy to. I got one of those arms that has like a almost like a dip to it. It's got a weighted arm to it, so it's like
Okay.
super easy to do like flutters. You just like
Huh.
tap it, just go. But yeah, those things are just like so fluid and nice to play.
Oh yeah.
They're just they don't. There's not a lot of guitars that come with them stock in them anymore, so it's just like, yeah. I mean, that guitar was really awesome to do whammy dives and crazy whammy stuff with. That's for sure.
Yeah. Man, it's a shame too. I guess maybe because they're a little bit pricier than Floyd's, but it's like off the top of my head, Dean has them on some guitars,
Yeah.
even some multi-scale ones, which I thought that surprised me.
ESP had the Glenn Tipton model
Yep.
that had one on it. I almost bought one of those because I was like, oh, a production model guitar with a Kahler on it. I mean, that'd be cool. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah, they're cool. They're definitely a more smoother, almost like there's like no sort of resistance to them. They're just kind of like
Yeah.
just barely touching, and they kind of like just do their thing.
They do
Yeah,
feel odd under the picking hand for when you palm mute, though. That
yeah,
takes some getting used to.
yeah, because they have those rollers, and it's almost
Hmm.
at a angle like that, not
Yeah.
flat like a Floyd. It is a little strange. Um, but I played that guitar on a few rhythms, but I had that set up at E standard. So when I was playing like leads and stuff, you know, on top of like a B standard sort of setup guitar, it kind of
Yeah.
worked itself out. Yeah, I'd like to have another guitar that had a Taylor. That'd be awesome.
Hmm.
But,
Oh yeah. Um, as far as songwriting goes, who would you say are probably your biggest inspirations?
definitely, like Bill Steer for sure, Carcass, Napalm Death, Jesse Pintado from Terrorizer. Um, let's see, Tony Iommi. I mean, the first riff I ever learned was Electric Funeral.
Hmm.
Uh, but James Hetfield, Metallica. I mean, that's the reason I play guitar. Um, what else? Uh, Repulsion, one of my favorite bands of all time. Autopsy. I mean, Danny Corrales, Eric Cutler, those guys are like, I mean, especially their leads and their like creepy, doomy parts are fucking amazing. I mean, let me see, I got a list here. The Hoffman Brothers, Deicide.
Oh yeah.
I mean, those guys. I mean, Jack Owen,
Hmm.
fucking early Cannibal Corpse. Just that was a huge influence. I mean, yeah, Roger the Mortician, just because like that guy writes some of the heaviest fucking riffs ever.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Just
I remember
yeah.
I remember getting like House by the Cemetery when I was like 14 years old when it came out, and me and my buddy took it to his house and put it on his boom box, and it was just like we just blasted that, and I was just like, "What the fuck is this shit?" I've never heard anything that low tune with that much low end. I was just like, "What the fuck is this?" Like I wouldn't even know that was a guitar. It was just like that heavy. I was like, I want to do stuff like that. It's like, I mean, yeah. I mean, I love like shreddy stuff and stuff, but there's something to be said about just caveman riffs that are just like
Mhm.
bass, just heavy as fuck. I still love listening to that shit, and writing stuff like that is fun too.
Do you ever listen to Roger's other project, Primitive Brutality?
Yeah, I used to have that CD back in the early 2000s. Yeah,
Nice.
it's good. It's like all him just doing like a little bit
Oh
more
yeah.
like brutal death metal, like more a little more technical. It's good
Hmm.
shit. Yeah.
It's a kind of a good blend, like lots of crazy tapping madness, but also still lots of the knuckle dragging ignorant riffs too.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um, Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, just that tuning down aspect, like
Oh yeah.
that them and like Hemdale. I remember getting the Hemdale 1994 demo and putting that on with that opening riff, like and doing that same thing on my speakers were just like stop. It's like so much low end, so low tune. Like when
Hmm.
you're like that young, it's just like, well, for me at least, I was like, I just wanted just everything to sound that heavy,
Hmm.
low tune, low vocals, low everything. That's probably why I never got into black metal when I was a kid. I was like, that's too high. That's too much treble. It's not low. I want everything low.
Yeah, that's fair. Their production quality does not do them any favors in that regard.
No.
Um, yeah, Mortician and anything Roger does really are still it's still some of like you ever find remember especially like when you're a teenager and discovering a lot of this stuff the first time how there's you'll just find a band that's so heavy you just kind of laugh. It's
Yeah,
like
that's yeah. Mortician and
Mortician.
Hemdale. Yeah, those are the
Yeah.
two bands where I was like, holy shit.
It's like I can still put on, you know, any Mortician record, especially if I'm playing for somebody I'd never heard it before. And that's still just like, I just kind of giggle. It's
Yeah,
like,
it's absurd,
yeah,
absurdly heavy. You know, it's like, and no one's really topped that either. I mean, all these
nah,
bands that tune down with their 9 string guitars or whatever, they still don't sound that heavy. With
right.
Roger on a 6 string, BC Rich. Yeah, that stuff's, I fucking love that shit. I still love it.
Um, so maybe a good segue from Mortician, since they're so horror movie themed and through a lot of
Mhm.
your works, there is a string of horror themes. Let's fucking talk about some horror movies.
All right.
Um, so first off, what would you say for just the nastiest, most fucked up, uh, awesome cult classics? Like, give me like a quick top five. Like, somebody who's wanting to get into like, it's like I want to start getting into cult classics. The only horror movie I've ever seen was Nightmare on Elm Street, the remake.
Oh, okay.
That's
Remake. Oh shit. They need help.
yeah, exactly.
Well, I would say, Street Trash is a good one. That's for sure. I mean,
Hell
that's one
yeah.
of my favorites. Gates of Hell slash City of Living Dead by Lucio Fulci. Let me see here. Couple movies there. I hate being put on the spot.
Oh, you're good.
Uh, let's see what else we got here. Basket Case, Frank Hannah
Oh,
Modern.
hell yeah.
That's a fucking classic. Maniac
Hmm.
by
The one with Elijah Wood?
early. No, no, that's a remake. Yeah, the original one. Um, three. Let's see here. Um, hmm. Disgusting. Let me see. Well, yeah. One I don't think a lot of people know of. That's kind of in same vein as Street Trash, kind of body horror one is Body Melt from Australia. That's a good one. A
That
lot
one
of
I don't know.
a lot of gooey sort of meltdown shit. Yeah, it's an Australian
Sure.
movie from the early '90s. That's a good one. So,
I'll admit, uh, I mean, not that I don't watch them, but because I love them, but body horror specifically, uh, has a very visceral reaction within me. I
oh, I should.
like, like everything else is like, oh, that's sick or that's badass. Body horror is badass, and I appreciate the hell out of all um, oh fuck, what's like the quintessential?
Cronenberg stuff.
Yeah, Cronenberg, but there was a specific one like that had like the shunting. What is that? What is
Oh,
that?
Society.
Yes, Society. Sorry, I was
Brian Usna. That's a good one. So I'm glad you
yeah,
brought that one up because that is a great one. Yeah, that's an underappreciated late '90s. I mean, early late '80s
yeah.
body horror movie. Yeah, '89.
Oh yeah. And hell, you got the poster behind you, RoboCop. Uh,
Oh, that's my favorite movie of all time.
like they sneak a little bit in there. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like the guy
Well, I got
getting
the tattoo of a meal melting right here on my forearm. So
no
yeah,
shit. That's awesome.
that's one of my favorite. Well, it's my favorite movie of all time, but that's one of my favorite scenes of all time.
Oh, it's so brutal. Like,
Yeah, it's like,
uh,
oh, like, help me, get away from me, man. Yeah, it's fucking, yeah, it's so brutal. I remember being a kid. I was probably like 6 years old when I saw that movie, and I thought if I took a shower or took a bath, that acid was gonna come out and like melt me like that. So my dad showed it to me, and my mom was like, "Why'd you show him that shit? Now he won't even take a fucking bath anymore. He's afraid it's
that's
gonna be acid." Yeah,
dude.
it's such a brutal movie for like a mainstream, quote unquote action movie. It's got
Yeah.
so much violence and gore. It's just that's why I love it. Yeah, it's just,
My so when I was like a little kid, my mom hated me watching horror movies, but my dad would let me watch all kinds of crazy like action movies like that and Total Recall and
oh
Demolition
yeah,
Man and Predator, um, stuff that like kind of teetered into some horror elements occasionally, or
well
like some,
yeah, well Total Recall is directed by Paul Verhoeven, who did RoboCop, same director.
right, right.
So it
So,
still has that like ultra violent sort of sensibility to it.
oh hell yeah, and it was
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
Um, like I immediately wanted a RoboCop toy, and
yeah.
which man, it's so weird. RoboCop has just been like a reoccurring theme in my life, like the last week or two.
Really.
Like, yeah, it's like I just finally played like the new game. Was it Rogue City or something?
Yeah.
Is that the game?
Uh,
And today I took my kid to the arcade. They had like one of the old RoboCop arcade machine there.
mhm.
Been playing those, and then boom, there it is again. It's like I
And
think I
now you're
just need to,
interviewing me, and I that's my favorite movie. So
yeah. It's just this weird reoccurring theme, but it's awesome. Uh, but yeah, no, body horror. It gets in as much as I love it and love, hearing about like uh Screaming Mad George and some of his practical effects and stuff.
mhm. I
Yeah,
just got I just got on Blu-ray the Guyver. He directed that. Have you seen that?
no.
It's co-directed by Screaming Mad George, and he did all the effects. It's based off a manga from the 80s. It's just all these like crazy creatures, and
I
it's
think
almost like
I've
Ninja.
seen.
It's almost like Ninja Turtles, the
Uh-huh.
1990 version of Ninja Turtles, but way more brutal and adult. Mark Hamill's in it. Here, hold on,
Okay.
I'll show you the movie. Yeah, Unearthed Films just put this out, but it's
I
from the early 90s, like 1991. But yeah,
huh.
he directed this. It's got David Gale from Reanimator in it. He
Okay.
plays the guy whose head's cut off. He plays a bad guy in this. Brian
Oh,
Usna, who directed Society,
yeah.
produced it. So it's all those same guys. It's awesome. All practical effects. It's fun.
Oh,
So
I
you should
gotta
check that
watch it
out.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Guyver.
Uh, I might have seen. Do you watch Dead Meat on YouTube
Yeah,
ever?
the guys that do the kill count.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, like I feel like they might have mentioned that, or just some of Screaming Mad George's other projects when they covered Society a while back.
Okay.
Because like they showed, obviously they go into a lot of behind the scenes stuff and talking about George. I remember them showing like some pictures of like some of his art exhibits, some of his uh performance art stuff that he's done, and I think they touched on that movie a little bit and maybe showed some stills or something.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I remember seeing it back on Cinemax back in like the early 90s when I was a kid. But this is what's cool about this is like it's like the R-rated cut, so it's got a little bit more gore in it.
Hmm.
Because I guess like New Line Cinema, who obviously the people who put up Ninja Turtles the year before, were like, oh, we can do another kid-friendly thing, but this wasn't kid-friendly at all. So they cut a bunch of shit out of it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool to have it a little bit more, complete. But yeah, it's a cool movie. It's definitely not as extreme as like Society or anything like that, but it's fun. So it's still got the cool practical effects.
Sure. What is the gnarliest either kill or just fucked up practical effect that you've ever seen in a movie? Like what's like it could be old dude melting in RoboCop if like that's a completely valid.
I mean, I don't know that's pretty great. Man, it's it's easier if you don't know as much because I have so many things going in my head. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah,
if I've only seen like 50 movies that have that in it, then it'd be like, oh, that's easy. It's this one. But I've seen like a million fucking movies that are like that have kills in them
sure.
that are like that. Shit, man. Um, I don't know. Let's go with Emil and RoboCop. I don't want to sit there and try to
Sure.
come up with that's a good one.
Fair
It's
enough.
pretty. At least it traumatized me personally as a kid. So obviously enough where I didn't want to take a bath for like about a week. So
I, I, it's hard for me to think of an all time. Off the top of my head, one of the most recent ones has been have you seen Possessor?
yeah.
Okay, it's the scene that they based kind of like the cover art off of, like um where I guess it's supposed to represent the guy's psyche kind of taking over her psyche or
Mhm.
whatever, and you kind of see him kind of tearing her from the inside out, and it's almost like he's wearing her body as like a shitty like skin suit, and you just kind of see like the skull collapsing from the inside, and you hear the crunch and all that. It's like it's kind of a trippy scene, but there's like it's like a Brandon kind of copying his dad with like reoccurring head trauma
Yeah.
in movies.
Uh,
I don't know.
I don't know. The one that came to mind, it's kind of a cliche one, but also, the one from Zombie, the splinter in the eye. Because
Yeah.
eye trauma is kind of messed up.
Yeah.
Um any sort of eye gore is kind of fucked up. But yeah, I mean I'll still go with the RoboCop right now. But I'll probably like in an hour or so, I'll be like, why didn't I think of that one?
And there's probably a million classics, like a bunch of scenes from The Thing, and that were
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's just so many like stuff from the 80s, especially where it's just like great practical deaths. Just people melting or having their heads exploded or arms ripped off. Or I
there is
mean,
a subtle one that I just remembered that I always really liked that creeped me out. And it's actually one of the more tame kills or whatever in The Thing. Um, and it's when they go into the underground tunnel and Wilford Brimley
oh,
pops up
the
and does the
yeah, he puts his fingers to his face.
yeah. Like it just
Yeah,
looks
that's
so
weird.
good. It's so good and it's so weird. It's not bloody, it's just weird and creepy.
Well,
Like,
that feeds into that body horror thing because he's like
mm-hmm.
literally like melding with his flesh, like his it's. And you can see there's a scene where like he's like dragging him by his face, like his hand is like
Yeah.
melded with his face, and he's just dragging him behind. It's so great. Yeah, Rob Bottin. I mean, that's still some of the best effects
Oh yeah.
ever.
Oh yeah,
It's
for sure.
great.
Um, is there a particular because I love lyrics that are directly paying homage to specific horror movies. Um,
Mhm.
and I know you're no stranger to it yourself. Is there a particular song that you just like the lyrics just kind of turned out as like a really particularly cool tribute to any song like that you thought that that formula worked out the best?
Of my stuff, like,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, it's kind of funny because the way I would write lyrics. I mean, the only band I really did where every song was about a specific movie was Frightmare.
Hmm.
Um, and the way I would write those lyrics is it's basically doing a book report about a movie. So I'd sit there and watch the movie and take notes of all like the plot points,
Okay.
even lines that I could use, and then take those and then write the lyrics based off of that. I, I mean, the opening track, Angela from Bringing Back the Bloodshed. I'm really happy the way those turned out, just lyrically, because I felt like they're very concise. It told the plot from beginning, middle, and end. So if you just read those lyrics, I felt like you would know
Yeah.
like what the movie's about. And also just musically, I felt like we really put that song together well with how we made the lyrics fit on top of the music with the different vocals and vocal styles and stuff. That's one of the few songs on that album where like all of this we're doing vocals. Like each line was done by a different person on it. So it was like very kind of like a big kind of thing where it came to like, okay, now so you're gonna do this part, you're gonna do this line. Yeah, I would say Angela from Bringing Back the Bloodshed was definitely probably my favorite lyrically that kind of represents the movie the best.
Gotcha. Well, so man, I think anybody watching this knows that Dripping Decay is on hiatus. It's basically shelved at least for the time being.
Hmm.
So what what do you have going on right now? Like or like what project according to Encyclopedia Metallum, you've got a couple projects still going, but what's actually active right now?
Well, I've taking like the hiatus, like you said, and doing some projects that I had been trying to do for a while. The number one thing I'm doing right now is a gore grind project called Noxious Mutation,
Okay.
and that's going to be very much in vein of like catasexual urge motivation from Japan, early gore beyond necropsy, before they were a noisecore band, back when they were more like a gore grind band. Mortician, Dead Infection, Regurgitate, just 90s gore grind. Very low tune, a lot of vocal effects, super blasty. Yeah, that's kind of like I've already written the whole thing. It's 10 songs. Just getting ready in the next few weeks to start recording it.
Hell
That's kind
yeah.
of like my main thing, death metal wise. I'm also trying, going to be doing a synth based project, non metal. Finally, get to do something that's not, guitar or metal based in that way, which I've been trying, wanting to do for like I don't know, 15 years, something like that. But just kind of hinted at with some of my intros that I've been doing over the years, like
Yeah.
intros, but like a whole album of that kind of stuff, just kind of like almost horror movie soundtrack kind of stuff.
Hmm. That's
Uh,
killer. I love that shit.
so on one hand, ultra fucked up horror, horror movie influenced gore grind, and then sort of like synthy, horror soundtrack kind of stuff. Still very horror based, obviously. You know,
Has to be.
yeah, of course. I don't know how to do anything else, but that's basically what I'm doing right now. I mean, I'm actually being very productive right now. So, which is, like I said, I've written the entire Noxious Mutation album basically the last 2 weeks.
Wow.
So I just every free time I have musically, I've just been writing. So it's just like pouring out of me. Uh, it's cool because like the Drip and Decay stuff was a B standard, and I just like tuned down the guitar to A, and I was like, it's funny how just going down a step kind of brings out inspiration in that way. It's like, oh, this sounds completely different. Now I just have it's easy to write riffs, that sound different, more grindy, more like chuggy, definitely more in that mortician sort of thing than Drip and Decay was, which is Drip and Decay is definitely more repulsion, pungent stench, that kind of vibe. This is definitely way more low tuned. Uh, like I said, way more vocal effects.
Hmm.
Like gonna have a lot of layers and shit, and definitely, I don't know if you ever heard my early, really early stuff back when I was like in high school. The stuff I did called Maniac Killer, where it's like super spastic gore grind. It's gonna be kind of like that, but not as frenetic and insane with like drums and stuff. So it's going
Gotcha.
to be definitely more like low tune. So I think people will dig it. So if you like Drip and Decay, you like my other bands, you're gonna like Noxious Mutations.
Gotcha. Hell yeah. Definitely keep me posted on that.
Hell yeah.
Be excited to share it. Well, dude, we are close to running out of time here, but before we go, I always like to kind of close these out with Mount Rushmore of death metal bands and or albums.
Okay. Repulsion, Horrified, uh, Terrorizer, World Downfall. Does it have to be death metal?
No?
Oh, okay. Judas Priest, Stained Class, Metallica, Ride of Lightning, um, Misfits, Static Age. That's five.
Perfect. Hell yeah. Great list.
Yeah,
Uh,
thanks.
so before we hop off here, anything you want to plug or tell people to keep an eye out for? Like obviously Noxious Mutation and the previously mentioned
Untitled.
synth. Yeah,
Yeah, as of yet, untitled synth project. But yeah, just watch out for Noxious Mutation. I'm definitely going to be recording that stuff soon, and it's kind of like my main metal project right now. Just watch out for that. It's going to be fucking gross.
killer. I personally can't wait to hear it. But Neil, I want to thank you for your time, man, and want to thank everybody for watching.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. See you next time.